Hello and welcome to the viewers of this video. This is the Orange Fan here, bringing you another entry for the episode Recap and Thoughts category. This video will be dedicated to episode 13 of Young Justice, Alpha Male. We begin this episode in northern India on September 10th, where Hamilton Hill, the mayor of Gotham City, is leading two other men on a hunting expedition, a tiger hunting expedition to be more specific. They do come across a tiger, but they notice these pylons emerging from the ground to stun the tiger, and they are also attacked by a gorilla carrying weapons. Although they are hurt by the gorilla, they do manage to escape with their lives. We then cut to Mount Justice on September 23rd, where the Justice League are making repairs to the cave after the events from the previous episode, Homefront. Aqualad is talking to Batman on the side, where he tells Batman about what Sportsmaster mentioned to him regarding the possibility of a mole being on the hero's side. And Aqualad says that Red Tornado might be the mole that Sportsmaster spoke of, but he also recognizes that it's possible that Red Tornado might have been an unwilling mole on his part, that he might have been pre-programmed to turn against them. Superboy overhears this with his super hearing, and he confronts Aqualad about this rather aggressively, and then he blabs to the rest of the Young Justice team about how Aqualad withheld information regarding the possibility of a mole being on their side. And while Aqualad tries to explain his reasons, the rest of the young heroes refuse to hear him out. But Batman is able to silence them when he tells them about another mission he has for them. More specifically, it turns out that the gorilla that attacked, Mayor Hamilton Hill's, Mayor Hamilton Hill being attacked by that particular gorilla was not the only occurrence for that, but rather the most recent of a series of incidents by this particular gorilla. So Batman wants them to go investigate this particular incident. And he also makes a point to stress that since Red Tornado is a member of the Justice League, it's the Justice League's responsibility to take care of the situation regarding Red Tornado. He also mentions that the Justice League members will rotate being the supervisor of the cave while Red Tornado is gone. And Captain Marvel, voiced by Rob Lowe, happened to volunteer as the first of these rotating supervisors. And it turns out Captain Marvel actually wants to tag along for this particular mission. He says it'll be a fun time to work together with him, although the Young Justice team think that, or at least some of the members of the Young Justice team think that Captain Marvel, like other members of the Justice League, doesn't trust him after what happened in Homefront, and they take the chance to send more jabs towards Aqualad's direction. Eventually, the Young Justice team and Captain Marvel all arrive in northern India. And while Aqualad is trying to lay out a plan, the rest of the team members continue to disparage him for withholding information about the mole, and they go their own separate ways. Or Robin and Kid Flash go together. Superboy tries to lead Miss Martian somewhere, but Miss Martian doesn't agree with Superboy's smothering behavior. And Artemis takes the chance to say that it comes off as patronizing to once again take a jab at Aqualad. So Miss Martian and Artemis head one direction, and then Superboy goes off on his own elsewhere. And Captain Marvel points out questions where was the part where he actually gave instructions, but he sticks around with Aqualad while they try to figure out what's going on. So, with all the different groups that everyone's divided up in, something in common happens to all of them. They all come across these uh, powered up animals. Kid Flash easily pieces together that these animals have been injected with cobra venom, which was created back in Drop Zone. And it's worth pointing out that these cobra venom induced animals are also wearing inhibitor collars, much like what the prisoners from Belle Rev wore, as we saw in Terrors. So, yeah, they're all being attacked by these cobra venom induced animals. And Aqualad manages to figure out that the inhibitor collars are what's making them hostile. So he lets Captain Marvel, who's with him, know this. So Captain Marvel is able to take care of the elephant. They're dealing with elephants, while Robin and Kid Flash are dealing with vultures. Miss Martian and Artemis are dealing with either crocodiles or alligators, and Superboy is dealing with a pack of wolves. One of them happens to have white fur, so he takes care of most of the wolves, but now he's in the middle of fighting this white wolf. Aqualad, after he and Captain Marvel take care of the elephants with the inhibitor collars, Aqualad realizes that the rest of the team might be in a similar situation, and he realizes that their radio communicators are off, and Miss Martian didn't establish the mental link with everyone before the mission started. Although Captain Marvel pointed out that Aqualad didn't enforce that. Aqualad responds that the rest of them wouldn't listen to him, and Captain Marvel's response is that Batman was able to get everyone to cooperate with mere words, or very few, if only one word at least. And Aqualad's response to that is, because he's Batman. Yeah, I couldn't resist. But Captain Marvel responds that it's true that it's hard to not take those sort of things personal, but he does recognize that Batman putting his foot down as the current leader of the Justice League was probably what saved his, as in Captain Marvel's, life several times. And Aqualad does thank Captain Marvel for the pep talk, which he attributes to the wisdom of Solomon. And then Captain Marvel notices a tiger, and he gets easily distracted by the tiger, while Miss Martian contacts Aqualad telepathically to tell him about the alligators or crocodiles that attacked her and Artemis. As for Captain Marvel, he tries to take off the inhibitor collar around the tiger, but the pylons, or at least similar pylons to the ones that happened at the beginning of the episode, appear around Captain Marvel, so he's now stunned. And we see the gorilla that attacked earlier, but he's wearing the red beret that one of the men with Mayor Hamilton Hill was wearing. He apparently stole the hat because he liked it. And eventually, Captain Marvel regains consciousness, where he's wearing an inhibitor collar, which restricts not just his abilities, but also his movements. Although his captor, who speaks with a French accent, says that he's allowed Captain Marvel to talk still because he thinks it might be insightful for the procedure he's about to perform. Namely, he wants to see. He says he's always been curious about the wisdom of Solomon's effect on the cerebral cortex. And we find out that the gorilla is named Monsieur Mala. So, back with Aqualad, he tells Miss Martian, who did contact him earlier, to establish a mental link with the rest of the Young Justice team. And they're all still complaining about having Aqualad's voice in their heads. Except for Superboy, he's too busy fighting the White Wolf still. And while the Young Justice team most of the members still disparage Aqualad. He finally has it with their complaining. He yells at them, or mentally yells at them, to be quiet, and says that if they're unhappy with him as leader, he'll gladly step down and let them re-elect a new leader when the mission's over. But while the mission is still going on, he is in charge, and he puts his foot down, and they listen to him, especially because we see Aqualad actually rip off one of the pylons from the ground. So now that they're all cooperating, most of the Unjustice members, except for Superboy still dealing with the wolf, do manage to come across the base where the base or fortress where Captain Marvel is being held. And they do work together to get through the force field and to deal with the inhibitor collar wearing Cobra venom induced animals that are fighting. The French accent captor of Captain Marvel instructs Monsieur Mala to aid in taking care of the young heroes. He says he can handle the procedure on Captain Marvel by himself. And we do see his identity. It's the brain. And so Monsieur Mala is fighting off the Young Justice heroes. And it looks like the brain is about to succeed in the surgery he's going to perform on Captain Marvel. But then the tiger, the one that Captain Marvel was going to help earlier, stops the brain. And the brain yells at the tiger for being a traitor and attempts to take care of the tiger. But then the Unjustice heroes are able to break into the base or fortress, and they manage to free Captain Marvel, and Captain Marvel frees the tiger from the inhibitor collar he's wearing. And Superboy manages to appear with the White Wolf. They apparently are getting along now. But eventually they're able to take care of everything. They're able to, or they manage to stop the brain's plans. And while the brain looks like he's about to launch an attack, all he really did was turn off the lights. And then when the lights turn back on, the brain and Monsieur Mala are both gone. So later on, we see that the Young Justice team and Captain Marvel have finished releasing all the Cobra venom-induced animals of the inhibitor collars. And Captain Marvel entrusts the tiger to watch over the other Cobra venom-induced animals to make sure they don't cause too much trouble. And he says he wants to name the tiger Mr. Tawny. And Superboy ends up finding out that the White Wolf wants to stick around with Superboy, and so Superboy gets to pick up another. Superboy brings another. Like the spear from earlier, the White Wolf is going to join him back at Mount Justice. And telepathically, Superboy does apologize to Miss Martian for smothering her earlier, admitting he was just worried about her well-being because of what happened in Homefront. And Miss Martian recognizes this, and she does say she does appreciate Superboy's genuine concern, but says that it would be preferable if they have a teammates first mentality when they're on a mission. And Superboy agrees to these terms. Just before everyone leaves, before they leave to return to Mount Justice, Robin calmly questions Aqualad about why he withheld the mole information, and the other teammates are willing to actually hear Aqualad out. Aqualad explains that Sportsmaster was the one who told him this. Artemis in particular is very vocal about not trusting Sportsmaster's word, and Aqualad agrees with this, saying that his reason to not mention this detail was because he suspected that Sportsmaster might have been lying in an attempt to unravel the team. And he did say at the same time, if Sportsmaster was telling the truth, he didn't want to let the mole know that he was aware of their presence. And the rest of the team admit it. They admit that Aqualad had valid reason to withhold the information, and they recognize that the way that they kind of were divided, the way they were divided on this particular mission kind of proved that Sportsmaster's possible attempt to unravel them almost came true. And while Aqualad does say he's still willing to step down as leader if that's what they want, they all agree that Aqualad should stay leader. Captain Marvel congratulates Aqualad, and he ends up flying off elsewhere rather than joining them back at Mount Justice. It's now September 24th, and we're in Fawcett City, where Captain Marvel arrives into the home or apartment or the living quarters of someone he calls Uncle Dudley, who questions him how his day was, and Captain Marvel says how exciting it was, and that hanging out with the Young Justice team on their missions is much cooler than what the Justice League usually does. Uncle Dudley tells him to go get ready for bed, but he also questions if Captain Marvel is forgetting something. Captain Marvel insists he was just testing him, and then he shouts, "Shazam!" When he does so, a bolt of lightning strikes, and instead of Captain Marvel, we see a 10-year-old boy named Billy Batson who says goodnight to his uncle, and his uncle, Uncle Dudley says goodnight in return, and that's how we end the episode. One could make the argument that this episode could be seen as an Aqualad spotlight episode, since probably one of the driving conflicts of the episode was how Aqualad was kind of struggling with his position as leader. Something that was, they did address that in Downtime, but for different reasons. More because Aqualad's different loyalties or conflicting loyalties. While this time around, it was more because of how being a leader can be a thankless job sometimes. And especially because the other members of the team were unwilling to listen to Aqualad because of him withholding information about the mole because of what happened in Homefront. Although Captain Marvel did give him some good advice about how, it can be hard for underlings to take the position, people under a leader can sometimes have a hard time not taking what their leader says personally, but sometimes a leader putting their foot down is what can save the lives of the team that they're leading. And there's also a point about how it's possible to put your foot down without stepping all over everyone, but at the same time, you don't want to be a pushover either. And I did like the scene where Aqualad kind of really got fed up with everyone's complaining and he just silenced them. And when he ripped out the pylon from the ground, I was like, that was a really cool scene, because usually we see Aqualad as calm and composed, but this time we really got to see an outburst from him, and it was especially apparent because he usually doesn't have those outbursts because he's generally even-tempered. But otherwise, there was also the conflict with Superboy being a bit smothering towards Miss Martian, but I appreciated that they portrayed both of them in a sympathetic light. Miss Martian had every reason to be upset with Superboy's smothering, but Superboy was recognized as being well-meaning or good-intentioned. He was just concerned about Miss Martian's well-being, and she did recognize this and appreciated the gesture, while also pointing out the importance of them having a teammate's first approach when it comes to missions, and Superboy agreed to this. So that was a good show of the importance of communication. While at the same time, the rest of the team did recognize Aqualad's valid points about withholding the mole information. And it's a good lesson to show that secrets do have their place. And I did like Captain Marvel in this episode. Rob Lowe did a great job playing him, and it was a great showing for him because my only other exposure to Captain Marvel, although lately he's being called Shazam these days, but yeah, Captain Marvel, my first exposure to the character was his one appearance in the DC animated universe. So this is where I kind of got a better understanding of Captain Marvel, and I find him to be a really likable character. And it was cool how they did that twist, how they did that reveal at the end about him being a kid in real life. Or, yeah, his true identity is that of a kid. And, yeah, I like that reveal for the sake of those who may not have been aware of his status as a kid. If they haven't, yeah, if this was your first time watching, if this was your first time seeing Captain Marvel in action, that was a great way to show how he was, yeah, I think they did that well. Like, they hinted at it with the way how he kind of was easily distracted by the tiger, and how he was really chill about going with him on the mission, because he was sincere about, hey, it'll be fun if we all go on a mission together. So, yeah, I thought that was a nice touch, how they hinted at it, they built up to it, and then they revealed it at the end of the episode, because yeah, I knew about that already thanks to his appearance in the DC animated universe, but if someone were watching, if this was their first exposure to Captain Marvel, that was a great way to kind of introduce the character to a newcomer who had no prior knowledge of the character. So, yeah, they did a good job with Captain Marvel. We also get to see the Brain in action and Monsieur Mala. They previously were in the animated Teen Titans series as part of the Brotherhood of Evil, so we got a very different approach with them. Like, this time around, Monsieur Mala doesn't talk. He acts like a normal gorilla, although he likes red berets, we know. And the Brain, yeah, it definitely makes sense that the Brain would be the intelligence behind the inhibitor collars and the cobra venom on the animals. That's another good detail, by the way, too. They once again tied in previous events with the light, or previous products that resulted from the light's actions were brought back to attention here. Because Hugo Strange is is now the warden of Bel Rev, and they were the one, and the light were the ones who supplied and bought Cobra's cobra venom. So yeah, that was a cool way to tie those details in together. And we're getting very close to the reveal on the light members. That's actually the next episode, so we're going to talk about that next for the next episode, because there you go. Overall, I did enjoy this episode of I did enjoy this episode. I thought they did a good job of taking the approach of Aqualad struggling with the leader position, but doing it in a different way than they did beforehand, and also recognizing that the importance of communication, but also recognizing that secrets do have their place in certain situations. And great showing of Captain Marvel, too. So with that said, we've now discussed the first half of Season 1 of Young Justice, so we'll be covering the second half of Season 1 next. Take care, and until next time.